This is Joe Carpenter. Today is July the 10th, 2021, and I am interviewing Axel Martinez for the first time. This interview is taking place at the home of Axel Martinez in Somerset, Texas. This interview is sponsored by the College of Liberal Arts and is part of the Maverick Veterans Voices Project. Thank you for allowing us in your home.
Well, thank you. Thank you for taking the opportunity to recognize the UTA Maverick veteran.
Thank you. Where are you from originally, and what can you tell me about your growing up?
Okay, so I'm a military brat. My father was in the military. Both my parents are Puerto Rican, so I am a Puerto Rican. My father was in the military and was stationed throughout the world, so every 2 to 3 years we moved to a different location. And so he settled down after Vietnam. He came to Fort Hood, Texas to be assigned to the 1st Cavalry Division, and this is where he decided to retire. So we moved from Puerto Rico to Texas in 1970 and been here for a long time. So 1970 I was in the 7th grade at that time.
Good.
And we attended Rancher Junior High School in Killeen, Texas. And then, of course, Killeen High School, and then, of course, the University of Texas at Arlington.
Killeen High School, the
Killeen Kangaroos.
So were you involved in ROTC in high school?
Yes, I was in the junior ROTC. I was interested because I have an older brother that's 2 years older than me, Louis Martinez, and he was in the ROTC program. My father helped him a lot. And so growing up, I'd see him with his uniform and getting ready for inspection and all that. And so that's when I took interest in it.
And tell me about your father's service. What did your father do in the military?
Okay, my father was an infantryman, and he worked with the 81 millimeter mortars. So he was a mortarman with 11 Charlies, the MOS. And so he served 20 years in the military. He was assigned to Mannheim, Germany, in the 8th Infantry Division. And so that's where my 2 brothers were born, Jose and Louis. And then he was assigned to Fort Devens, Massachusetts, that's where I was born.
Okay.
Then from there, we went to Fort Carson, Colorado, where he served in the 4th Infantry Division. And then after that, he got sent to Vietnam, so we moved to Puerto Rico to live with my mother's parents in Puerto Rico. And when he returned from Vietnam, that's when he got assigned to the 1st Cav Division in Fort Hood, and that's what brought us to Texas.
Your brothers, did you have any sisters?
No sisters, just 2 brothers.
Just 2 brothers. Did they serve as well?
No, I'm the only one that served, yes.
Okay.
We all were interested in the military, but I'm the only one that served.
So why did you choose to attend University of Texas at Arlington?
Okay. So to be truthful about that, it wasn't the university that attracted me. It was an organization on campus that attracted me. So when I was in high school, they would conduct, in the summer, military drill clinics. And the Sam Houston Rifles were the ones that were sponsoring that drill clinic. And so I would attend the drill clinic as a high school student. And that's when I was very impressed with the organization, how well it was organized and how sharp they looked in their military uniforms. And I knew it was going to be military. So that's when I found out that, that's where I wanted to go. I wanted to go to the University of Texas at Arlington to become a member of the Sam Houston Rifles. That's what drove me.
Now, you were part of a competition when you were with the Sam Houston Rifles at UTA.
Yes.
You and General Simpson, if I recall.
Yes.
And that was a 2-man competition, which was a little bit different from what they had done previously.
Well,
Tell me a little
I'll
bit
explain
about
that a little bit. So real quick on General Simpson. So General Simpson and I, we met in 1970 in the 7th grade.
Oh, wow.
And so we did the 7th grade all the way through high school together. And then when we graduated from high school, we both were interested in the Sam Houston Rifles. And so I had a vehicle at that time. And so I said, let's just go. And so went to his house, packed his bags, went to my house, we packed my bags. And Lester and I drove up to the University of Texas at Arlington. And we went down for the 4th of July parade in Arlington, Texas.
Wow.
And we participated in that parade. And then we stayed up there at the Jody house. They had like an apartment where all the Jodys were. So we stayed with them until Lester and I found an apartment. And we moved into the Alpha Delta apartments together. And then that's when it all started.
Wow, that's a great story.
Yeah. So we started marching on the drill team. And so one of the things, Lester and I were on the high school drill team too, the Killeen Kangaroos. And on the high school drill team, we participated in a lot of competitions, but never won a single one. And so our standard level wasn't very high in terms of overall team performance. And so when we went to the Sam Houston Rifles, our very first competition, it was in El Paso. I'll never forget this day because there's some very influential people in my life. And one of them is Andy Cano, sitting right over here. He was a Ranger when I was in college as a freshman. So he was the big stud on campus. And I'm like, oh, I got to find out what that is because I'm going to be a stud too. So I actually, the year after he came back was a Ranger, then I went to Ranger school the year right after that. And I was the big stud. So we were the studs together at the same time. But there was another guy, Orlando Reyes, also who influenced my life in terms of being competitive. Because coming out through high school, we never won a competition. We just won individual performances, but not team performances. And I was satisfied with that because that's what the standard was. And everybody was telling us how great we were and all that. But when we got to college and we went to our first competition in El Paso, we actually got second place in inspection phase. We got first place in basic phase. We got first place in fancy phase. And we got first place overall. So we won 3 first place trophies and we won 1 second place trophy. And Orlando was just totally upset. He was just very angry. And he did something that I'll never forget. He took his bootlace off of his boot and he tied that into a hangsman's noose. And he took the second place trophy and he hung it by the neck. And he told us, because we were very impressed at the time, we were recruits at the time, and he said, you never accept second place. Second place is the second loser, or the first loser. And so that stuck with me for years and years. So after that very first competition, all the way through I graduated college, we never got another second place trophy ever again. And that ties us into this other additional competition, which was a tandem competition. Right. So you have the standard competition, and then now you have something for more like an individual-based competition. So the first year, Orlando and I developed a routine, and that's the same routine that's been used throughout the years until the team disbanded. So Orlando and I did the very first tandem. It's at Texas A&M, which is where that tandem drill competition is held. And so Orlando and I won the competition our first year. So then Orlando graduated, and then I did the competition with Lester Simpson, General Simpson. He and I did it together, and then we won first place. And then I graduated, and then Lester did the competition with Jonathan Bevel. And so then they won first place. Wow. And so then, of course, I was already in the Army at that time, and my first assignment was overseas to Germany. And so I kind of broke contact with the team and everything that was going on with the team until I came back years later.
That competition with you and General Simpson is on YouTube.
Is that it? Okay, good.
Yeah. So you can find that on YouTube.
And you won't see, it's the very, like I said, it's the very same routine. We did the same. Orlando and I developed that routine, and then we use it throughout to beat the Aggies. Of course, poor Texas A&M, because they were known as the fish drill team for all these years, but they did not know that there's this one little school, University of Texas in Arlington, with a small little team called the Sam Houston Rifles. And unfortunately for them, we went to all the competitions that they went to. So they were always the first loser at every competition. It's just how it happens.
I wonder if they had anybody who hung the second place trophy up.
Well, probably not. That's why their standard was not as high.
What was your major in college, and why did you choose that?
Right. So I started out in business because I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do when I went to college. I just knew I wanted to be on the Jodies. And so that lasted about 1 semester until I took my first business class, and I realized, this is not what I want to do. So I changed it to criminal justice. And so I ended up getting a degree in criminal justice.
Mm-hmm. Was there anyone on the faculty at the university that influenced you?
Well, faculty, yes, but only in the military science department. Okay. I couldn't name you anybody in the faculty. I remember Zach Prince. He was in the registrar's office. He was a Jody, and he was very supportive of our program, so I got to see him a lot. He was influential. All the retired Jodies that would come, and Stan Thompson was big. I was telling Steve about Stan Thompson. He was a lieutenant in the National Guard. He was always out there helping us and supporting us. But there was a colonel, Lieutenant Colonel Andre. He was a professor of military science. He was a very special man in my life. And he actually helped me. So as a freshman is when I met him, and he was always very positive with me. And so after my first year, because I had a 1-year scholarship that paid for school for the first year, and so I went to Colonel Andrew, told him I'm going to have to drop out of the program, and then he said, "No, you're going to go to airborne school and ranger school, and they're going to pay you half the pay of a second lieutenant." And to me, when I was a minimum wage kind of guy, that was huge money.
Right. Oh yeah.
And so I went to airborne school. The next day, I went to ranger school. Completed those 2 courses, and I came back as an airborne ranger on campus, big stud with my good buddy, sitting right over here, right next to you. And I mean, we were the 2 studs on campus, and we earned the respect of all of our peers because they knew what we had gone through to get that, those accolades.
What year did you graduate?
I graduated in 1980, one of the very few Jodies that came for the 4-year program. So, because, I had 1 year from my scholarship that I got from AUSA, and then I had 3 years from ROTC. So that was it. I did everything in 4 years now.
Were you commissioned upon graduation?
The same day I finished my graduation ceremony, walked over to the Military Science Department, had my uniform on underneath my cap and gown, and I got sworn in as a commissioned officer. Yes.
You remember who swore you in?
Yes, I had the Sergeant Major Lopez. He's a member of the Medal of Honor as well. Sergeant Major Lopez, Colonel Zimmerman swore me in because that's to be an officer.
Okay.
But Sergeant Major was my first salute, and I gave him my silver dollar.
And what was your branch and specialty?
Okay, so I started out as a field artillery officer, and so I went to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and I served as an artilleryman on my very first assignment. So I got assigned to Germany in the field artillery. So I did the field artillery for the first 3 years. We did a lot of training at the military training area. We had our own facility there in Baumholder, Germany. It's the coldest I've ever been in my life. And so we would go to the officers club after training, and I would go into the officers club, and I'd see these guys in these jumpsuits, being real cool with the glasses and all, and sitting at the bar drinking, and I'm like, man, those guys, they're always here before we get here. What's going on with that? So I went over there and started talking to one of the guys. Yeah, I'm a pilot, and an aviator. And we started talking, and he talked to me about the aviation incentive pay. And I found out he was getting $840 more a month than what I was getting, and we were the same rank. So I was like, wait a minute, how's that work? So shortly after, I applied for flight school. And so when I PCS from Germany, I PCS straight to Fort Rucker, Alabama to go to aviation flight school. And that was the year that the aviation became its own independent branch of service. So I was one of the first to participate in that program. So I switched my career over to aviation.
And what year was that?
That's 1984.
84.
Yes. Became an aviator at 84. Did that for most of the rest of my career until about 1999. And then I switched my functional area to it's called a foreign area officer.
After training, what was your first assignment?
Right, so my first assignment was in Germany.
Yeah.
1st to the 83rd Field Artillery
Yes.
and the 8th Infantry Division in Baumholder, Germany.
Okay, and that's where you saw...
That's when I realized I was in the wrong career field. So after 3 years of sweating, going out there, attacking, waiting for the Russians to attack and all that good stuff, we have what we call the GDP.
Yes.
And so we had our sector that we had to train in over and over and over again. I realized I was in the wrong career field. Yeah, I needed one that pays a little bit more and is a little bit more lucrative.
After aviation training, then what was your
first assignment? So I went to the 2nd Armored Division in Fort Hood, Texas. And so while I was assigned to the 2nd Armored Division, now I'm a captain. Yes, I'm an aviator captain. Yeah. Okay. That's my first exposure to combat. So the way they framed the whole recruiting piece was, hey, we need a Spanish-speaking aviator to go to El Salvador, and do a classified operation. So that sounded attractive to me. And so I pursued it and ended up having to go. And then I found out what it was all about when I got in the country. So, and it's declassified all now. So, but bottom line was that the country of El Salvador was under a civil war at the time. And we were supporting the government. So we were providing aviation assets during that operation. And we had our Special Forces military advisors. And my mission was to put the advisors in and bring them out, especially in the event of an attack. It was a classified operation. Nobody was supposed to know about it. We had an American killed in El Salvador at the time. That's not good for publicity. So my job was to come in the attack and evacuate them out. So do a tactical maneuver to come in, pull them out.
What kind of helicopters were you flying?
I was flying UH-1Hs at that time. So that was my first exposure to combat. And in fact, we got combat credit for our assignment there. It was my first close encounter with death and, being afraid. And instead of talking about it, having to do it, you'd fly into these what we call landing zones. And so they were hot landing zones, and you had to go in there. And you could see so on the M60 machine gun, like every 6 bullet is a laser bullet. And so all you do is you just see like fireworks going in, and you have to fly into there and get that American out of there. So that was interesting.
After that, after your experience in El Salvador, where else did you serve?
Right.
Overseas?
So I was actually serving in the 2nd Armored Division in Fort Hood with duty in El Salvador. So when I came back from El Salvador, it was a year later. Actually, my grandkids are sitting over here with us. Their father was born during that mission. Oh. I was actually authorized to come home for the birth of my youngest child, Anthony. And so I came down. They gave me 5 days. So it took me 2 days to get here from El Salvador. So when I got here, I had to take my wife to the hospital. We had the baby, and then I had to get her back to the hospital because I had to fly back for the mission. So I got to see my baby born, Anthony. Wow. And so that was interesting. And then I said, and I had to go back to the mission. So
how long were you in El Salvador?
I was there for 6 months now. And that was, back in those days, if the Army wanted you to have a family, they would have issued you. So that's how it was. Changed completely now, but that's how it was back then.
What did you do after that?
So I got back, I went to the advanced course. So I was in the very first advanced course of aviation because aviation had just become a branch. And then after that, I went to Panama. I was assigned to Panama. And I first got there, I was a company XO. And then I became a company commander of my own company, which switched aviation aircraft. I went from flying a UH-1, I went to Fort Rucker, and I got trained in flying the CH-47, the Chinook. And then we formed a Chinook company in Panama. And so I was there for Operation Just Cause. I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, but it's my second exposure to combat. And that really enlightened me a lot because I was a commander. Now I'm in charge of troops. We're going to have to go on missions. It's a little different when you're actually the one going in and doing a mission to having to tell people, okay, you're assigned to this mission. Here's your mission. You got to go execute this mission. So it's a complete different level of concern, different level of responsibility. Because, when you're responsible for yourself, that's one thing. But when you're responsible for other people's lives, that brings in a whole new twist. And so I got a lot of exposure to that. Now, even though the war was pretty short, I mean, it wasn't over 30 days. The reason it was only 30 days is because it's pretty aggressive. I mean, the United States Army came in full force. Okay. And so I got full exposure to death and destruction. And so that was pretty traumatic. For a young captain, as young as I was. The interesting thing about it was when I PCS to Panama, it was a PCS with family. So I was able to bring my family with me. But as President Bush #1 was in command, he was going to make a tough decision and knew it. So what we were authorized to return our family early to the United States. So we were very strongly encouraged to return our families. So we did that, returned our families, and then we went back, and then that's when he initiated the action again. Mr. Manuel Noriega, from Panama. We basically took him out. So now I am going around with 2 combat tours, and nobody else has got any. Right. You know what I mean? So I was kind of like, whoa, wait a minute, because all this fun stuff that Andy and all this stuff, that happened later. This is 1989, and I already Grenada. I think some of the guys got exposed to Grenada. That was the only show in town. So I was kind of like, I had my fill, so to speak, in terms of engaging in aggressive actions with other people.
Tell me about switching from the UH-1 to the Chinook.
Yes,
what was that?
So that's called a transition. And so I wanted to fly the fastest helicopter in the United States Army inventory. And everybody thought it was the Black Hawk, but it's not. It's the CH-47. The problem is the CH-47 is a lot larger aircraft, and it's a medium lift aircraft. It can carry up to 50,000 pounds. And so, I was the battalion S4, the logistics officer for our battalion at the time. And then the battalion commander called me in and said he wanted to give me a command, and he wanted to form a Chinook company because he had only a platoon at the time. So I was the very first commander of Charlie Company, the Sugar Bearers. Our organization formed out of Alaska and transferred over to Panama. Yeah. So that's my transition to a better aircraft, much stronger, much powerful aircraft was a big deal for me.
Yeah.
So, and then I was actually able to command it.
After Panama, where did you go from there?
Okay, so after Panama, so now I'm a senior captain at this point, and I commanded an aviation company as a senior captain. Normally, commands in aviation at the time went to majors. So I was able to get my command out of the way. And so we were experimenting in the Army with functional areas, a second area of specialty for an individual. So you could single track or dual track. My year group was required to dual track. So you had to go do something else. And so that's when I became a 54. That 54 is systems automation. So I went straight from Panama to Fort Gordon, Georgia. That's where the communication school is. And there I learned how to work on computers. And so I learned how to code on computers. I can code in Ada. Just doesn't exist anymore. But this is back in the early stages of computers. Sure. And when we had the big mainframes and all that. So I worked with computers, believe it or not, from aviation.
That's a big switch.
So I went to Fort Gordon. I was trained up at Fort Gordon. Then I asked for an assignment at Fort Hood because my family was in Fort Hood. Okay. So I got assigned to Fort Hood to the Director of Information Management, DOIM, in Fort Hood, Texas. And that's where I got promoted to major.
Wow.
Yeah. So after that, let me just go over it. So then I went back because I was dual tracking. So then I went over to First Cav and I interviewed for an opportunity to participate as a battalion executive officer in an aviation battalion. So I did my interview. They accepted me. So I became the battalion XO for the 4th of the 227th Aviation, First Cav. And in that assignment, that's when Somalia was the only show in town, and we sent our OH-58 Deltas from my battalion. A platoon of our guys we sent down to Somalia to support the Somalians. That's when all that Black Hawk down and all that stuff happened.
Right.
Yeah. So that was out of my unit.
So that particular aircraft, tell me about that.
The Delta?
Yeah, because that's a little different.
Yeah. So it's the Kiowa, and basically it's a Bell Ranger, modified for the Army, and it has a special camera at the very top right above the rotor system. There's a special camera right above the rotor system. So the idea was that you could actually come to the tree level, and with the camera you could actually see, and they can lay these targets for the Apaches, or the Cobras at that time as well. They could lay the targets and basically not be exposed. So that was a very good idea that they came up with on the OH-58 Deltas.
Then how much flying were you doing at that time?
I was in an executive officer position, so I was doing the minimum required to maintain my my status current, because you have to have your currency. So I wasn't flying a whole lot then. I was pretty much in a leadership role.
But that was your third aircraft type, I guess.
That's right. That's right. Well, we had the OH-58 Deltas, we had UH-1s, we had Blackhawks too. Yeah. So I was the battalion XO for the entire
for all of them?
Yes, for all of them.
Okay.
Yes.
Did you fly all of them?
No, I only flew right now. The OH-58 is all I flew.
So how did you communicate with loved ones while you were either deployed or stationed overseas when your family wasn't with you? How did you communicate?
Okay, so my first deployment was El Salvador. And we're talking now 1985. And so, as you know, the communications was not as enhanced as it is today. And so you basically communicated through what's called high-frequency radio. And so in our aircraft, we're all adapted with this high-frequency radio. So you have to climb up to about 2,000 feet above ground level, and you were able to communicate back to the United States with that radio. And so, probably once a month, maybe if that, we try to see if we can get a hold of our family members. They were required to go to a military installation where the G6, the communications folks who had the radio, and then you could coordinate ahead of time. Because basically you coordinated by writing letters. That's how it was. And so, you'd write a letter and get a letter a week later. That kind of thing.
It's interesting that, 15 years after Vietnam, you're still communicating in the same way
exactly
that they were at Vietnam.
Letters was the primary, and then the high-frequency radio was our alternate.
So how did you deal with stress during your career? What did you do to do?
I don't know if you see these biceps on this slide,
right.
But I still do with stress.
I figured that was going to come up.
And I got my grandkids here too, so they, we do 90 push-ups every day, baby. It's gonna.
How
you
many?
have to stay. We do 90.
Okay.
Because they're still young and growing up. But no, you have to do push-ups.
Right.
Or you find a loved one like my wife Jill, and she can calm me down and tell me, hey, she could tell me when I'm starting to spin out of control. So, but no, exercise is number one. Running, I did a lot of running, and then a lot of weightlifting to try to stay calm.
So what kind of challenges did your being away from home create for those at home?
Well, when I first came back from El Salvador, I came to say hello to my son, and he didn't want to even let me hold him because he didn't even recognize me. He didn't know who I was. And I'm like, hey, I'm your dad,
Right.
Come on, Anthony, and get with it. But over time, once they see you every day, they'll learn to accept you. So that was hard though, because, you're in a situation where you start thinking about family. So when you're in your aircraft, we have our machine gunners on our aircraft, and as the pilot in command, you have to give the okay for them to squeeze the trigger. And so when you're going into a hot landing zone and you're given the okay to squeeze the trigger, I started later on thinking about, man, we're squeezing the trigger, we're shooting, we're killing other human beings who also have a mother, have a father, may have a child, may have a wife. And, I was trained not to think that way. And then afterwards, you start thinking about that and you start, man, my goodness, I did this. And you have to convince yourself that you're the one that's in the right. Because you remember that person that you're shooting at, they think they're in the right. So who's the right one? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Well, it depends on what your government tells you. So it's a difficult situation.
So when did you leave the military? What year did you leave the military?
Right, I left in 2007. So after I was working as a computer guy, then I went back to aviation, right? And then I got assigned to the Pentagon because everybody said if you're going to have a successful career, you got to do a tour in the Pentagon. Okay. So they talked me into doing that. And once I was in the Pentagon, I met a lot of contacts because that's where all the heavy hitters are. And President Clinton was the president at the time. And he had this big thing of anti-drug going on.
Yeah.
So I wanted to get into the anti-drug war. And so when I finished my assignment in the Pentagon, I got promoted to lieutenant colonel in 96. And I asked for an assignment in Bolivia. There was three main hubs for the counter-drug warfare. It's Colombia, Bolivia, and Peru. So when my time to rotate came in, the billet in Bolivia opened up. So I said, hey, I'll take that assignment. Of course, I had to go look at the map to see where Bolivia was. But I said, I'll take it. Because I knew that.
South of somewhere.
Right, exactly. And so it's in South America. And, so I did 3 years as an aviator there, flew a bunch of hours.
You're still active duty.
Flew active duty, lieutenant colonel, flying UH-1s. And I was basically an advisor to the Bolivian Air Force and flying counter-drug missions and teaching them how to do counter-drug missions.
Somebody that, a lieutenant colonel, that's kind of high rank to be.
Yes. It's a diplomatic position.
Oh, I see.
So you have to have a certain level, certain status to be able to get into those positions. Like I had to go interview with the State Department. I had to interview the Pentagon to be selected for the position. They're all lieutenant colonel positions for aviators because it's diplomatic.
Right.
And so, you have to go down there. You're on diplomatic status when you go down there. You work for the U.S. ambassador in that country. And so that's who my boss was. But the aviation assets that we had belonged to the State Department. So my first line supervisor was a State Department employee. And so...
How'd that work?
Yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah.
Because it's, how you're talking about working for two different bosses.
Right.
You have, and then they're in opposition of each other. So it required a lot of skill, agility, and ability to deal with that. But
Maybe that's why you needed the diplomatic staff.
That's right. You have to be diplomatic within the U.S. Embassy itself, and the country team is what we call the country team, which is an assembly of CIA, DEA, the military, right. And so it was interesting. It was a good assignment. We did a lot of work out there in terms of fighting the drug war, and so we did aerial eradication, manual eradication, eradicating the drugs that were being grown as crop in those countries. And then we did a lot of intersections with the DEA. So this is basically, assaulting on the target that's getting ready to transport drugs. And then we would come in and bring DEA agents in, what they called the UMAPAR, which was the Bolivian force that DEA was training to assault the target.
And you did that for 3 years?
Did for 3 years.
So what years were those?
That's 96 to 99.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I was getting a little ahead of myself. What did you do after Bolivia?
So after
how do you top that?
Yeah, well, no, that's pretty high up there, right?
Yeah, yeah.
You know how your previous interviewer, he said that everybody reached their peak at a certain level.
Yes.
I had reached my peak.
I see.
I was pretty much done with that kind of stuff. So I was in aviation, and I asked to go to California. I wanted to be assigned to California. I had personal reasons for that. And so they were like, well, wait a minute, we don't have an aviation assignment for you in California, and in about a year, you're going to be coming up for promotion to 06.
Right.
So California is not a good move for you. And I said, hey, I just finished this mission. I want to go to California. Because I wanted to be where my children were. My children were in California. And so they reassigned me. They warned me and said, this is it. I said, that's it. I'm good. So I went to California, and I was the Inspector General over at the Defense Language Institute Foreign Language Center. Okay. Yeah, at DLI Monterey, California.
Wow.
Yeah, and so what they did was they grandfathered me into a program called Foreign Area Officer. So I was already a lieutenant, colonel. You come into that program as a captain.
Oh,
but I came into it as a lieutenant colonel. So I told them, look, I'm fine with everything. I realize I'm not going to get promoted, but I want to get my master's degree. Okay. So they told me, yes, we'll do that. So I went to the Naval Postgraduate School, which is in Monterey, California also.
Right.
And I did the Navy's. That's how I got my master's degree, through the Naval Postgraduate School.
Is that right? Monterey. And what was your master's degree in?
In National Security Affairs. Yeah. And then I became a foreign area officer. And then from that point forward until I retired in 2007, it was all foreign area officer assignments.
And what did those duties? What did the duties of a foreign area officer entail?
Yeah. Okay. So my first assignment right after that was at the Defense Language Institute. So my duties there was to serve as the Inspector General. So that was my first duties as a foreign area officer. However, that wasn't specific to foreign area officer. So my next assignment, now I could ask where I wanted to go. And so I wanted to go to Puerto Rico. Okay. So the United States Army South was located in Puerto Rico. Okay. They were in Panama. And then with the Carter Treaty in Panama, we had to give Panama Canal up. So they moved the Army unit from Panama to Puerto Rico, specifically talking about the Army unit, U.S. Army South. And so they were in Puerto Rico. So I said, well, this is an opportunity for me to go to Puerto Rico. So I asked for the assignment to Puerto Rico, and I got assigned to Puerto Rico. Then when I got to Puerto Rico, General Valenzuela was our commanding general. And so he called me in and interviewed me and said, I want you to be my political advisor, political military advisor. Mm-hmm. So I said, roger that. And so I served as a political military advisor. So what I did as an advisor is I would coordinate for him to meet with the commanding generals of all of our partner armies. So within Southern Command, we have 32 countries. And of those 32 countries, we were coordinating specific army-to-army actions with our partners.
Right.
So the whole idea behind that is called security cooperation. Mm-hmm. Security cooperation is, let's see if we can talk our partner army to do more so that we don't have to deploy our soldiers. So like, for instance, like humanitarian assistance, disaster relief, peacekeeping operations, those kind of things.
Right.
So that the U.S. Army can focus on the big stuff, Iraq, Afghanistan. We can get our partners to come in, provide their troops to do what we did not consider the big stuff, which was humanitarian assistance, sure, disaster relief, peacekeeping operations, and use their troops to do those things. So we had to, sell them our equipment. We had to train them on our equipment. We had to get that relationship strong so that we could have confidence in each other, to trust each other. That was a very, very big thing. So my job was coordinating what we were going to talk about and to who when we went to all of the embassies within our countries. So I travel all over the world. And so primarily my focus was in Central and South America.
You had a really diverse career.
Yes.
After your time in Puerto Rico, what then?
So our organization was in Puerto Rico, and there was a lot of protests going on in Puerto Rico, mm-hmm, anti-military, anti-U.S. protests in Puerto Rico by this small little group. And so the commander at the time, General Valenzuela, decided he wanted to move to San Antonio. He's from San Antonio. He knows Fort Sam really good. He was really, really good friends with General Shinseki, who was the chief of staff of the Army at the time. And so General Shinseki said, okay, we'll move you to Fort Sam, Houston, Texas. Mm-hmm. So at the time, my youngest son, my grandkid's father, was a high school senior. So the organization completely moved from Puerto Rico to San Antonio, Texas, and I stayed back as the rear detachment commander until my son graduated from high school. Once he graduated from high school, then I reassigned from Puerto Rico to Fort Sam, Houston. And then I retired in 2000. That was in 2005. I retired in 2007. So I did 2 years and then retired.
Well, that's kind of a whole life in and of itself, your military career. So what did you do after the military?
So after the military, the first thing I did is I started selling real estate, with royalty real estate with my dad. Yeah, started making a lot of money there. And then I got called from one of my friends who followed me in the assignment that I was in. And he said that he needed my help and that really could use my help. So he asked if I would come back to the office. So he did a contract, and I was hired on to the contract right a year later after I retired.
To contract
into the U.S. Army South as a political military advisor.
Oh, so you went back.
Went back to do what I was doing.
But as a civilian.
As a civilian, yes. And then after that, they liked what I was doing, so they made a civilian position for me. So now I went from contracting to civil service, but I continued doing the same thing. And so what I'm doing is I manage a program now. It's called the Military Personnel Exchange Program.
Okay.
It's very, very much like a student exchange program, except that we're exchanging military people. So like, for instance, at Fort Sam Houston, where I work, I was able to create a position for a general officer. So our deputy commanding general at Army South is a general from the Colombian Army right now. And I rotate that position. Every 2 years, I bring in a different general from a different army to serve in a U.S. Army unit as a U.S. Army participant. But he's from a foreign army. And I also use his expertise to advise our commander when he goes on his trips to the different countries, because he's very familiar with the military culture, the military traditions, customs, and the courtesies. And so he can get him on board, and that helps the relationship building that we're trying to do as we ask our partners to step it up and do more in international affairs.
Well, how long did you serve in the military?
27 years.
And you retired as a
lieutenant colonel. Right.
And then as
Civil service.
Civil servant.
I'm still doing it right now.
You're still doing it right now.
I'm still in civil service right now. I'm going to retire in 2 years.
Okay. And what would your civil service rank equate to?
About a lieutenant colonel. About the same.
About the same?
Yeah.
And your
pay's good. I'm not complaining. Yeah.
You're still not complaining about the pay. You started not complaining. No. You're still not.
Listen, I got my first paycheck. Okay, when I joined the Army.
Yeah.
Right. I told you that we graduated at UTA. From the graduation, we went over to the military science department. We put on our uniform. Right. Well, I had it underneath. Right. Yeah. Did our commissioning ceremony. I went on leave for 30 days. Right. I hadn't worked a day in the United States Army, and they let me go on leave for 30 days. I got my first paycheck. I hadn't worked a day in the Army. It was $800. I had never seen that much money in my whole life. $800. I thought I was rich.
You were.
You know, and so I'm like, this Army thing's pretty good. I don't have to do anything, and I still get paid. Yeah, so it worked out pretty good. So that's why I did it for 27 years. And I continue. I'm what they call a soldier for life. I'm a soldier for life. Yeah, I'm still serving the military in a different capacity.
So, what medals or citations were you awarded during your service? Just the big ones. Yeah, I know there's.
Well, it's really not so much the big ones; it's the ones that really mean the most.
Yeah, let's talk about those.
The ones that mean the most to you. I'm going to tell you, I was a young captain. No, I'm sorry, I was a first lieutenant. I was a first lieutenant, and I was a battery XO because in the field artillery they call their companies batteries. So I was a battery XO. And my commander was a captain. And they have this Order of St. Barbara medal that you get to wear with your dress blues.
Okay.
Nice little medal. And I was awarded the Order of St. Barbara as a field artilleryman over my company commander, who was a captain and a commander at the time. And I was just his XO. Right. But the battalion commander is the one that decides who's going to get the award. And so I was awarded the award, and I was just complete. Now, that award doesn't even go on your records. Okay, that does not go on your ORB or anything. But it is the most prestigious award that I've ever received because it made me feel so good about what I was doing, for my country.
You know where I first heard of that award?
No.
From your mentor.
Oh, is that right?
Orlando Reyes.
Orlando, did he get it too?
Yes, he did.
Oh, he must have done something right then. So that's not bad, doing something right at least once in his life.
Right.
No, Orlando's a good friend of mine.
Yes, I understand, but I've heard of that before. He's a big mentor of mine.
He's shaped my life.
Yeah.
But I'm glad he got it because I can tell you one of the things that he shares with me is that hard work has its payoffs. And I got that as a first lieutenant. It was just something else. And it tops really almost everything else that I've gotten, really. I mean, it just does because the next award that I really, really feel proud about was that I was inducted into the Hall of Honor at UTA at my university. And by the way, I don't know if you can see that right there, but I am hardcore UTA Maverick. I love my school. Yeah. It's the best thing that ever happened to me. Yeah. And my gosh, I'm so thankful for all the people that I met. I'm thankful for all the people that helped me along the way and all the friendships that I developed. Because I don't really have friends, I have family. Everybody becomes family members to me, and they are a part of my family. And to this day, as you know, we continue to be friends, and we'll see on each other on an occasion. If one of my buddies, Andy, Orlando, Lester, Larry, they're doing something and they invite me, Axel Martinez is going to be there. That's for sure. I'm going to make it a priority.
And it's always on Facebook.
That's right. My wife is big on Facebook, so all this political stuff started.
So, are there any memories that you have that make you laugh? Anything that's funny that happened during your career?
The biggest one I think that makes me laugh is when we were at a bonfire at UTA. We used to have a football team at UTA back in the day. And so anyway, so we're at this bonfire, right? And we were pretty much low income, poor kids, but we went to a university that kind of attracted wealthy kids. And so there was this fraternity that had the nicest cars and the nicest, and these guys, they had the audacity to bring out a brand new leather couch, a 3-seater, plush, beautiful thing, and they set that thing right down in front of the bonfire, and they were blocking everybody's view. And so Orlando started looking at me, and he says, "Hey, you know what? I think that couch needs to go into the fire." And so I said, Roger that. Salute, right? And move on, right? So we say, hey, guys, couch is going in the fire. Well, this couch costs $3,000. You once brought it out here. Hey, you brought it out here. Now it's going in the fire. And they didn't think it was going to go into the fire. So we said, yeah, it's going into the fire. And so there was about 10, 15 of us and 10, 15 of them. And next thing you know, it turned into a big rumble. It was a rumble in the jungle, man. Fists were flying. People were kicking, biting. I mean, doing whatever you can. And I just want to say, I can proudly say, and I tell you this, Orlando, that chair made it into the fire because we put that down my chair. Now, there were some consequences for that behavior.
Oh, okay.
Because the Maverick police came out.
Oh, yeah.
And then we all had to act all innocent and everything like that. Yeah. And everything was fine until Orlando punched the other guy right in the face right in front of the police officer. That's when things went downhill. Yeah. But we overcame. Yeah. But that just makes me laugh because it was so funny. We didn't realize that.
It's the first time I've heard this story.
Oh, is that right? Yeah, okay. Well, I got many more I could tell you off camera.
Yeah, we may do that offline. So did you experience any discrimination while you were, you served in your career?
Yeah.
Did you?
So discrimination exists. That's not a made-up term. However, coming out of UTA, I don't know, UTA is a pretty liberal school. Most of my professors were very liberal. And it almost seemed like they were focused on convincing me, that I was disadvantaged somehow because of my color of my skin. So they kept talking about different programs. But my father taught me something a little different. Like, it doesn't matter what color your skin is, it's how hard you work. And so what I did was to avoid discrimination, because it existed, especially in aviation, when I was one of the few Hispanic Puerto Ricans in aviation world back in the time that I did.
Sure.
And so to avoid that, you work hard and you serve as an example to others, and your leaders will see how hard you work. Then they won't care what color your skin is. Right. But if you fall into this victim mentality, which is something that unfortunately, a lot of people try to present to you to convince you that you're the victim of a system. Mm-hmm. And you're not the victim of a system if you go in it and work hard. And get serious about it and get it done. And you try to overachieve. So there was this one group that I would not associate with. I'll give you an example. Right when I came in the Army, it's the best example because it's the first one that popped up to me when I came out of UTA. Because my standard was like up here, coming out of UTA being a Jody. The standards of a Jody is the top. Right. You're not going to find anything lower than that. It's perfection. So I'm at basic, field artillery course, and we're hanging out, talking, and we're getting ready to do PT because we do PT in the morning, every morning, right? And so now it's time to do the PT test. And so I'm with this group, and they're all looking to see what the passing score was to be able to pass the PT test. And I'm with the wrong group. You know what I mean? Uh-huh. I'm looking at the group and saying, hey, what does it take to get 100 points? How many push-ups do I have to do to get 100 points? Because 100 points is the maximum you can score for an event on the PT test. Gotcha. So I quickly moved from one group to another group saying, no, man, I'm not with you guys. You want to just pass. That's not me. I want to know, what do I need to achieve 100%? And that's how I pursued my career in my life was, I'm going to be the best at whatever. If they sent me out to cut grass, I'll tell you a little story about my son, my grandkid's dad. He used to cut my grass, and I used to pay him $35 to do that tour. And one time, after the attack at 911 in 2001, my son wanted to be a soldier. He wanted to join the Army. He wanted to go in the 82nd Airborne Division. I want to go fight for my country. And I said, that's great. But what happened was he got there early, and so they have what's called snowbirding. Well, they'll give you a little task to do because you're just sitting around doing nothing. And so I was still in the active service at the time, and they asked him to go out and cut the grass. And he was so upset about that. So he called me and he said, Dad, I need you to use your rank. You need to call this captain here trying to tell me I got to go cut grass. And I said, son, the captain told you to go cut grass? He goes, yeah, can you believe it? I said, yeah, go out there and cut the grass. He said, but Pop, I came here to fight for my country. I didn't come over here to cut grass. I said, son, whatever task the Army gives you, That's the one you're going to do to the maximum of your ability. You're going to go cut grass better than anybody else has cut grass before. And I said, and then look at it this way, son. I paid you $35. The Army's going to give you $3,500. Get out there and cut that grass.
Was he disappointed in that answer?
No, he went and he cut that grass
great.
best he could.
Okay.
And my son's very successful. And you can see, like I said, my grandkids, I'm very proud of them.
Yes.
He's doing great. And he was in the 82nd. Matter of fact, Brandon over here was born in Fort Bragg, North Carolina, while my son was a member of the 82nd Airborne Division. Yes.
So is there anyone who you served with specifically who influenced you?
That I served with?
Yeah.
Yes, there was. General Miles. James Miles. He was the greatest American. I mean, this guy was amazing. He changed my life in terms of how I conducted myself. Because trying to be the best at everything that you do in your career can make you feel like a prima donna, so to speak. And that's kind of how I was going around, thought I was the best, and then I wouldn't treat all people the same way. I was treating people differently. And he taught me, no, you've got to treat the janitor just as good as you got to treat the commanding general. From top to bottom, you treat everybody with dignity, respect, and they'll respect you for that. And he changed my life because I wasn't that way before. I thought I was the baddest thing since sliced bread, you know what I mean? And you were lucky to get to know me. And now I'm not that way anymore. I'm lucky to get to know all of you guys. It's your blessing in my life. And that man changed my life forever because I realized that no matter how smart you are, no matter how dumb you are, you're still a precious human being. And that life is precious. And you got to treat everybody the same. Don't treat people different because of who they are. So General Miles, he was my battalion commander, and he's the one that interviewed me to become the battalion XO under him when he got his battalion command in the 1st Cav Division, 4227 Aviation Battalion. And he told me, he said, Axel, you've been the best XO I could ever have. And if I ever get a brigade, I want you to be my brigade XO. So when I was out doing my mission in Bolivia, where I got promoted to Lieutenant Colonel in 96, that man found me and called me. He was in Korea getting ready to get his brigade, and he goes, I want you to be my brigade XO. Of course, in Korea, there was it's a great mission and all that, but it wasn't a real world mission at the time. And I was doing counter drugs, which was a real world mission at the time. So I had to weigh that, and I told him, I really appreciate you so much calling me and thinking of me, to serve under your leadership once again, but I respectfully decline. I'm in a real world operational mission, and this is where I feel my services are needed. And so I declined that opportunity.
Are you involved in any veterans organizations presently?
Well, part of the UTA Maverick Cadet Council. I'm also a member of the Sociedad Cultural Hispanoamericana. My parents have been a part of that organization. It's a cultural Hispanic American organization. It's in Fort Hood, Texas. And so I participate with them. Every time they ask me to, I go down. I'll MC projects for them. I'll just donate my services to them at no charge and support the organization, promoting the Hispanic culture among our society. And then, of course, all the military organizations, aviation, I'm part of that. And support the local American Legion. I'm a member of the American Legion right in town, right up the street, as a matter of fact. Supporting our veterans in any way that I can.
What, if anything, reminds you of your time in the military service?
So the interesting part of this, I think, and Andy probably experienced some of this when he was doing ROTC, but I developed some of these officers that are in the Foreign Area Officer program, and now they're the leaders. And you get to, so it's a different thing when you're serving as the leader for somebody, as the mentor. And then now that young person becomes now the leader, Right. It's interesting because I always kid my boss right now because I used to be his boss. Now he's my boss. That's right. So the colonel that I work for, he was a young major, senior captain, young major when I met him, and shaped him and formed him. Yeah. And now he came back to the organization. Now he is my boss because he's, it's run by the military. So I get to work for him now. That's so it's payback time for him.
If you had to serve in the Army all over again, or if you had the choice to serve in the Army all over again, would you do it?
Yeah, so I think that that's a good question, because my initial answer is absolutely, of course. But things are changing in this country, and I'm saddened by some of the changes in this country. So of course I would when I was growing up, you know what I mean, where things were the way they were when I was growing up. But our country is very, very different now. And I'm totally against a socialist type government. And our country is moving in that direction. And that saddens me deeply. And so if this was a socialist nation, would I serve? Well, it's a good thing I don't have to answer that, because I paid my dues. My dues are paid in full. And so all I'm going to do is stay alive and try to change the lives of the people around me as best I can, make it as pleasant and wonderful as I can. And that's not something that I have to worry about. But I just hope that what we do in terms of trying to shape the young leadership nowadays, hope that we don't move in that direction, but we're in that direction right now.
How often do you return to campus, and what do you think of the changes?
So I think the campus is just marvelous. I'm very proud. I'll show you again, UTA. I wear my, you know what I mean? I'm representing here. Yeah. But I'm very proud of my school. My wife went to Texas Tech, and we have this challenge all the time about Tech and UTA. And she goes, well, your school doesn't have a football team. I said, but we had one. Right. Anyways. And
at one time, they were a darn good one.
They were a darn good one. That's right. And Dexter Bussey, I don't know if you remember him, but he made the pros, too. He was one of our running backs.
Is that right?
Yeah, but in terms of going back to the school, yes. So, I do the Hall of Honor. Mm-hmm. The last time I went, the last inductee was it? I'm trying to know. So the last inductee was Larry. And so we couldn't do Larry because Larry, it was COVID. And so they didn't really, it was like virtual or something like that. Yeah. And we tried to get on and we couldn't get on. But I normally go to all of them. And I went to Andy's. Yeah, I think Andy was the one before. I think he was before Larry. I've been to almost all of them. I go back to that university. They call me and they say, hey, we need to teach a leadership class. I'm there. I'll go over and teach leadership.
And you're in the Hall of Honor. Man.
And I'm in the Hall of Honor, yeah. I don't know how that happened.
I was going to say. Well, listening to your story, I have a feeling I know. But who nominated you to go into the Hall of Honor? Do you recall?
I'm thinking either Leicester or Orlando, one of the two. Okay. I'm not real sure which one, because they were tag teaming on it. You know what I mean? Right. Trying to keep it a secret. But then they had to send you a little application so that you can fill out your history. Yes. So then you kind of know what's going on. You know what I mean? So yeah. But I think it was between Orlando, probably Leicester. Yeah, those two.
Couldn't be nominated by two better guys.
No, they're awesome Americans. And I mean, like I said,
company
listen, everybody, I'm telling you, everybody that I know, they graduated from the University of Texas at Arlington. Every one of them's a hero in my mind. I mean, starting with Bunky Gronzik. You know Bunky. He's your father-in-law sitting right over there quietly, ex-aviator. These are all great Americans.
Yes, they are.
And they helped shape the organization that I was a part of. Yes. They made the organization so good, I said, I have to go to that organization, not that university. Because if that organization would have been at another university, I'd ended up with that other university. But these guys formed it at this university, the University of Texas. That's why I went there, part of that. And so, the credit that you get out of that is you get a degree coming out of UTA. Right. And so it all worked out for me. So I think that every one of our guys is successful. I'm very proud of them. They're great Americans.
What advice do you have for young people going into the military today?
Going into the military, I'm going to tell all the young people every time I get a chance to understand one thing, and that is to be a leader, you have to be a follower. You have to be a good follower. You have to be the best follower. If you can be the best follower, your leadership opportunity is going to appear. So don't even worry about it. Be the best that you can be at the task that you're asked to perform at that time, no matter how simple or how complex. That's what you need to do. And your opportunity to lead will come. But be the best that you can at all times.
Is there anything you'd like to add to this interview that I've not covered?
Well, I want to thank my wife for letting us come into the living room because we were
raining.
going to do this outdoors. The wind was blowing, and she was like, "Oh, I didn't clean the house," you know. So, but no, my wife's been very supportive of me.
Yes,
and I love her. My grandkids, you know, of course, our two friends right over here to your right, Steve. Thank you guys. Thank you for what you're doing. I want to thank you personally because what you're doing is showcasing the veterans, you know, that graduated from UTA or attended UTA. And nobody else is doing that. You're doing that. And if it wasn't for you, nobody would know about it. And so I really take this opportunity to thank you for what you're doing.
Thank you very much. And it's been my pleasure. And thank you for having us in your home. Thank you for taking the time to do the interview. Thank you for your service.
You got it.
And look forward to seeing you again soon.
We'll see each other again. You got it. Thank you. Right. Thank you so much.